This is my first gaming monitor, a HANNSG HH221DPB. I bought it in January of 2012, making this, as near as makes no difference, 12 years old. It will be a teenager next year. Notice the Windows 7 sticker might give you an idea. It wasn't much, it was the most cost-effective solution I could get my hands on, setting me back around £90 at the time. It's a 1080p, 60Hz, I think TN panel with a claimed 5 millisecond response time, 250 nits of peak brightness, and a whopping 2 inputs, those being DVI and VGA. This is what I picked back then, but something like this, AOC Q24G2A, is what I'd pick today. It's a little more expensive, even when accounting for inflation, but it's such a leap forward that I think it's worth the extra 50 quid or so. So let me show you what's changed in the last 12 years. First off, I should make it clear that this bad boy hasn't held up perfectly. Even at 100% brightness, my SpiderX reports just 80 nits of peak brightness. It is comically dim. While I can't say for certain that this would have hit 250 nits when new, there's only one review of this that I can find from the time, and it's sparse with testing. The reviewer does note that the backlight was a bit duller than other monitors we've tested, so perhaps it couldn't even reach that 250 nits claim even at the time. Still, 80 nits makes this a somewhat hilarious comparison. It's also worth noting that HANNSG never specifically marketed this as a gaming monitor, but there wasn't exactly a slew of budget gaming monitors available at the time, so this is what I gamed on for a fair while. With that said, just looking at, spec for spec, how far we've come in terms of fairly budget monitors, it's pretty impressive. Back then you got 1080p at 22 inches at just 60 Hz, all on a frankly dreadful TN panel. Viewing angles are non-existent. The brightness claim, even if we take it at face value, 250 nits is still pretty weak, and even if you take the 5 millisecond response time claim at face value, which you really shouldn't, that's still a little on the slow side. Now look at the new one. That has excellent viewing angles, 400 nits of peak brightness, and a 4 millisecond response time claim that I'm much more inclined to believe. I mean, it's still quite, a bit wrong, but it's a lot closer. Now let's look at some actual test results. The one that surprised me the most was the color gamut coverage and accuracy on the old panel. The old HANNSG hit pretty much 100% of the sRGB color space. And while that's not exactly all that impressive by modern standards, it functionally matches this Q24G2A and is pretty remarkable for the time. The color accuracy was also a surprise, as despite not even being powered on for a good 3-4 years at this point, it still came out with an average delta E of just 1.79 and a maximum of 3.9. That's really quite impressive, especially since it can't get past 80 nits. Despite its meager brightness, the best contrast ratio I could squeeze out was around 500:1. For some context, the AOC Q24G2A on its lowest brightness setting ran at 70 nits and had a 710:1 contrast ratio at that brightness. Despite the better contrast, at full brightness at around 900:1, the accuracy is remarkably similar to the old HANNSG, a delta E average of 1.3 with a max of 4.22. Of course, one thing that definitely has improved is response times. Even though this is a 60 Hz panel or monitor, which allows it to be remarkably slow and still acceptable, this still manages to have multiple frames of ghosting on screen at any one time. My open source response time tool reckons that this old TN panel averaged out to around 24 milliseconds, with the worst results peaking at 39 milliseconds. That's 42 Hz and 26 Hz equivalent respectively. That is just awful. Truly. Compare that to the Q24G2A, which averaged just 4.8 milliseconds, and you'll see how far we've come. In fact, even more budget options like AOC's 24G2Z or ZU are still fairly close, running at 7.6 milliseconds on average, which is considerably better than 24 milliseconds. Something that appears to be about the same is actually the latency, specifically the on-display latency. A good result here is that all of the test results are under 1 frame of the monitor's refresh rate. For this 60 Hz monitor, that would be no results higher than 16.7 milliseconds. And much to my surprise, using both a DisplayPort to DVI-D and HDMI to DVI-D cable, none of the results were higher than 16.7 milliseconds, with the average sitting predictably right in the middle of the frame. I'm genuinely quite surprised, although the more that I think about it, the less surprised I am. This display is devoid of almost all features beyond actually, displaying a frame. There's no overdrive, there's no adaptive sync, no backlight strobing. It's just taking a new frame in and drawing it on the screen. Nice and simple. And I suppose that brings us nicely onto what has changed the most, that being the features. While playing on the HH221DPB, I couldn't help but notice the horrendous tearing. VSync didn't help, arguably it made it worse, but that's something that I've generally gone without noticing for a good few years now, thanks to adaptive sync, either NVIDIA's implementation, that being G-Sync, or AMD's take, FreeSync. Neither of those technologies were available in 2012. G-Sync would launch in late 2013, although that was in the sort of fairly expensive and new 144Hz gaming monitors like ASUS's VG248QE. Nowadays, some form of adaptive sync is included in pretty much every monitor, with some offering extra features like adaptive sync with HDR. While many non-gaming monitors still don't offer overdrive controls, anything even remotely marketed to gamers often comes with 3 or 4 overdrive profiles to help push the panel to change colors faster. That makes a big difference for response times, and of course to your gaming experience too. Everything goes from often a blurry, smeary mess and mush to, well, okay, let's be realistic, it's still, not exactly a pristine experience like an OLED, but it is a noticeable difference. By far the biggest change in features is the refresh rates. 240Hz 1080p monitors like the 24G2ZU are remarkably affordable, with 360Hz options not all that far behind. Compared to 2012, where there were considerably fewer options, all with decently high price tags, I mean, 144Hz, 165Hz have really become the standard for gaming monitors, and there are countless options from AOC, Yama, and plenty more for basically the same price as this HANNSG model, at least adjusted for inflation. If I had the option to buy one of those, or save a bit of cash and get something like this absolutely stunning 1440p 165Hz IPS option, I would have taken it in a heartbeat. In short, this is what I bought in 2012, but this is what I'd buy today. So there you have a look at the my first gaming monitor, my oldest monitor that I purchased brand new anyway, and what I would probably pick today instead. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. What do you think about my original purchase and my recommendations for, the modern day equivalents or the modern day options? If you have any suggestions for monitors that you think people in this sort of price range should pick up, leave them in the comments down below as well. I'll leave a link to this Q24G2A in the description if you're interested in checking it out and seeing pricing when and where you watch this, because it can and does vary. Also, if you want to see more videos like this one, more bonus console reviews, on general tech reviews, and a load of other stuff, do check out that subscribe button and turn on the bell notification icon. If you want to support these videos and be able to test this stuff yourself, you can pick up one of my open source response time or latency testing tools in the link in the description at osrtt.com. There's also a load of other links in the description if you want to support the channel down there too. Otherwise, thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed it, we'll see you on the next video.